And John, why don't we just pass number 3 back to you? John was nice enough to orchestrate this number 3, recreational marijuana recommendations presented by Cannabis Control Commissioner Jennifer Flanagan. If you can do the honors as an introduction, that'd be great.
Well, it'd be an honor. Here we have, like we said, a former state rep, former state senator, Jennifer Flanagan, who was Governor Baker's choice to be on the Cannabis Control Commissioner. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us here tonight. We have a lot of questions about cannabis, coming with the July 1st deadlines. And we figured there would be no better source than to go to you guys and kind of give us an update and hopefully give us some advice and some things to work off of. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jennifer Flanagan. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being interested in this issue. I know a lot of cities and towns are grappling with some of the details. And I will say, having been the only person in the state who voted no on question 4, voted for the law, which turned into Chapter 55, and is now regulating the actual adult use of marijuana, it's been a hasty schedule. It's a very tight schedule, and with that leaves a lot of questions. So just to update you as to where the commission is today, we just completed 10 hearings across the state of public comment on our draft regulations, which were done the week of Christmas. We had an open public comment period that closed at 5 o'clock on February 15th. So now we've compiled all of those public comments that have come in. The commissioners are going through them all. They've been categorized in terms of subject matter. And on Monday, we will be holding our first of, I believe, 3 public meetings to discuss the final regulations. So the draft regulations, everyone's had a time to sort of look at them. They've had a time to absorb them, and now we'll go in and we'll be able to make additional recommendations, add, subtract, what have you, and then hopefully they will be done by the March 15th deadline. So with that, the Cannabis Control Commission is set up of 5 commissioners, Chairman Steve Hoffman, myself, Commissioner Britta McBride, Commissioner Kay Doyle, and Commissioner Shalene Title. Commissioner Hoffman, Commissioner McBride, and I were all appointed by different people. Commissioner Title and Commissioner Doyle were appointed by the Treasurer, the Governor, and the Attorney General collectively. So you have different terms for different commissioners. I will tell you that these 4 people that I've worked with since September 1st have done yeoman's work. Given you're the Board of Health, there were times when I felt that our office was an infirmary because we were all sick and tired and overtired, but the work's gotten done. And I think one of the main accomplishments we've had is that we've been very transparent in the process. We've asked for input. We've gone as far as Pittsfield and Springfield and Franklin County and them all the way out to the islands. We know everybody has some concerns. There's a lot of concerns on if you were a yes town, the process. If you were a no town, it's the process. If you have an RMD, a current medical facility already open, what does that mean when adult use comes? And we are going to work all that out next week. And that's when the final regulations will be deciphered. We do it openly and transparently. We come under open meeting law like everybody else does. So you have 5 people in an office who can't collaborate, which coming from the legislature has been very interesting from my perspective, because I'm used to collaboration and bipartisan collaboration. So we have now heard from the public and we're going to move forward. So I don't know if there's certain things you want me to talk about. I know there's controversial issues that are in the regs. I know that people they're interested in what comes next. They're interested in what's happened. The one thing I will say is that my appointment by Governor Baker was based on my public health background. It was based on my behavioral health and my mental health background. And so I focus a lot on the healthcare part of this. And so you often don't hear me talking about economics and social justice. You hear me talking about public health and not having the diversion to minors and making sure we have an awareness campaign and making sure that our community and our main streets are what we want them to look like, which could be very different from what some of the other commissioners are talking about. That's based on my background. That's based on the work that I did in the legislature. I was the chairman of the Mental Health and Substance Use and Recovery Committee. I was the vice chairman of Public Health. I was the chairman of Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities. So I've seen families affected by drugs in general, not just marijuana or heroin or fentanyl, but in general. So that's where my perspective sort of comes from when you ask questions of me.
There plans or maps which tells you where the problems are significantly dominant across the Massachusetts, whether any city-wise or town-wise,
Dominant in what way?
in terms of activities that go on nowadays with marijuana, even though it's not regulated, things that happen,
There-
any causes for.
Well, there were two
issue.
reports that were issued. One is how the marijuana affects the cities across Massachusetts. The report came up with 29 cities and towns that were disproportionately affected, or most disproportionately affected. All the public documents are on our website. We have a website that's attached to mass.gov, so if you Google Cannabis Control Commission, it will all pop up. They looked at unemployment rates. They looked at incidents of arrests. They looked at percentages of, I believe, incarcerations. And so from there, we were able to determine sort of a roadmap. The map we do have is all the yes and no cities and towns. I mean, certainly there's a lot of yeses and a lot of no's, but I will say that even though 53% of the people voted yes, 47% voted no. And that's a hefty number in any kind of campaign. Having been elected, you don't want to win 53-47. You'd like the 60-40, you'd like the 70-30. So I think from my perspective, and this is not on behalf of the commission, I look at that 47% very strongly in making sure that we pay attention to people who didn't want this to be legalized. How do we do it responsibly? But we have, there is data on crime. There is data on what is related to marijuana. Of course, there's always an opinion on we should use the word marijuana or cannabis or pot or what have you, but the data is there, and I think we're taking all of that into account as we move forward.
Right, I'd like to see where we stand in that situation and
We can
understand.
probably get that for you, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure Mark or somebody will get it from the office and then. look at
But
it.
a lot of it too, I mean, you have to think of some places have regional efforts.
Oh, okay.
You know, I know where I come from up in Leominster, we have Fitchburg. Well, some of the Fitchburg incidences come from New Hampshire, so they're not all people in
Border,
Fitchburg.
yeah.
But yet Fitchburg's also a college town. So you have people who don't live there. I like to say that they stay there once in a while, but they don't actually live there. They're not residents. So for me, taking all of that into account is really important.
Yeah, so we have to look at the big town, the city next door to us,
Yes.
how it impacts us. Whatever happens there impacts us, so we need to make sure.
And I think that's very unique because there's a lot of places that like to say, well, that's their city, that's their problem.
Yeah.
And they don't see how the borders are just blinded and they're all blended. And that's one of the big things that I continue to look at
You
is
know,
regions.
if your neighbor's town property value goes down, your town property value also
Yeah.
goes down, so they should know that it is
Yeah.
direct impact on everything.
Are there any general studies regarding just general, either the pros and cons, the benefits versus the negatives of instituting this?
Well, I think there's a lot of subjective information. I think that it depends on who you ask. Personally, for me, I've done a lot of research with the other states, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Nevada, and asking what they did right and what they did wrong. And to be quite frank, they'll tell you what they did wrong. They have no problems. You know, people say, oh, look to Colorado. Colorado had a hard time ramping up their program, their adult use program. A lot of people flocked to Colorado thinking they were going to get jobs. It didn't create the employment that they thought they were going to in the industry. A lot of young people went there thinking, you know, college applications went up because everybody thought they'd be able to walk down the street. You know, I think that being able to implement this responsibly for Massachusetts has been a challenge for us. And certainly we have very unique and dynamic pieces of Massachusetts. For instance, if you look at question 4, and it's interesting to me, you know, and sometimes I politicize it because everyone says follow question 4. Well, question 4 didn't include our farmers. And they by far have been one of the largest groups of people that have spoken out since the passage of Chapter 55. Farmers want to be able to help their industry just as everybody else wants to be able to create their industry. Mm-hmm. They want to be able to have craft cultivations. They want to be able to have cooperatives or micro businesses. They want to make sure that they have a piece of this because someone, you know, you can pay them to grow it outside just as much as you can pay them to grow your crops. And so I think for Massachusetts, we have some unique things. We have the farming. We certainly have cities and towns that have a lot of parks and recreation that doesn't coincide with buffer zones on where these marijuana facilities can be. And again, that was never accounted for in question 4. Municipal government was never accounted for in question 4. Nobody ever thought there were going to be 351 cities and towns with their own way of doing things. So we have to account for that. When it comes to public safety, I can say that I think the commission took some pretty strong votes on, there is a list of crimes that if you have been committed of, or then you are not going to be part of this. And I say from a public health perspective, we went so far as to say if you were a registered sex offender, you can't work in the front part of a store because you're looking at IDs all day. You're going to see where everybody lives. And we want to make sure we protect the public. Some may call that the nanny state. I just call it protecting consumers. I think that if you're giving your information to people, you need to have that protections. So we took some votes that are really strong like that, making sure that security is a big deal. There are people that say that they want to be able to get into this industry, but they can't afford the security measures. Securing the project is important. And to me, I think we need to strike that balance. Does a farmer have to have an all-out security system? Maybe not. Maybe a fence works. Let's look at where he is or she is. But we do need to make sure that we do not allow for the diversion of the product anywhere. One of the big things that I tell people all the time that makes us different than the other states is we have so many contiguous states around us. Colorado doesn't have that problem. You can drive from one end of Massachusetts and the other in hours. And you can also get to Connecticut and Rhode Island and New Hampshire and Vermont and what have you. We need to make sure that we pay attention to that because you don't want the products diverted. And we want to make sure that this is done in a legal and responsible way. So there's some little nuances, I think, with Massachusetts that you didn't see in other places. Just like Alaska, you take a plane to most places in Alaska. We have the waters. And technically the waters are federal waters. The air is federal airspace. How do you get the product from the islands to a testing facility? Because we want to make sure that it's tested in an independent lab. We've got to make provisions for that because you can't have people trying to take this across the water all the time. Also, given what Jeff Sessions has said and Attorney General Lelling has said, this is still a federally illegal substance, and we need to pay attention to that. Where, as a commission, are working just as we have, our deadlines are still the way that they are, but we still have to pay attention keep one eye open with what's going on in the federal government and how it's going to affect state government.
Well, if it's going to be a cash business, because none of the banks would
It is.
participate in it.
The only bank I think right
Yeah.
now taking any banking is Century Bank.
And it's all cash.
It's all cash. So
that's the
DOR is
case.
going to have to help us come up with a plan for people to pay their taxes.
I look at the safety issue.
Oh, it's a
If
huge
there's a lot
safety
of
issue.
cash, I'm sure there is busting the store happens, and then you have crime.
And that's one of the things why security has been such a big important issue, I think, for the commission, is that we do know that it's a cash business. We do understand that people are going to be having knapsacks full of cash. And how do we protect not only the employer, but the business? And how do we prevent crime in places? It's interesting because we do have a social justice piece to this. So places that have been disproportionately affected by crime with marijuana involved, there are some equity provisions. We're allowing people to sort of partner with bigger companies so that they can have a mentor-mentee relationship and then get on their own after a couple of years. We do have some social justice leadership awards if you have a diverse board and you have people that work there. So there's a lot of provisions that we're putting in place, but also being mindful of the fact is that in Colorado, the more concentrated area was the poorer areas, and we don't want to see that happen here. I don't want to see that happen here in Massachusetts. I mean, as a commissioner, I am very concerned that we're just going to exacerbate the problem. I don't see how we're going to right the wrongs of the last 40 years with one industry. And I don't think that it's responsible for me to say that.
Is there provision for the managing or monitoring these small farmers, how they irrigate the system, and what quality of water they have to do it?
Yeah.
What kind of dependency is there for these products to change its chemical structure and then affect us, because these are directly consumed, unlike the other things, or the cooked or something
Believe
else
it or
that-
not, the places that I have visited, the indoor cultivation sites that I have visited, they're more concerned with what's in the water than you're concerned what's in the water.
No, I don't know you.
They
JG's pretty
they
concerned about
go
water.
so whatever town they're in, they will filtrate that water on its own, so there's nothing in it. They don't want chemicals in it. They don't want anything that they can't account for, because that's going to affect how the plant grows. Now, I can't grow a cactus, so I'm not sure how any of this works. But when I tell you that if you've ever taken a tour, and if not, you should take a tour. I was in Franklin at their facility inside, which is different than outside. But again, they want to make sure they know what's in that water. So it goes through a filtration system from the city's water to the facility, and then it gets pushed out to the plants. There is such a science to growing a marijuana plant that there's no room for mistakes in their minds. This all has to be, even the minerals they put into it, even everything that goes into it, is all chemical. Is
I
all
understand that, things may go
yes.
outside that frame, like these street drugs
Yep.
could even kill people.
Yep.
So we don't know what's going to happen unless we
Anything that's
monitor
gonna
that carefully and then do things. So we need more people. To staffing issues will come up with that.
well, considering we're only 8, our staffing issues are very much there right now.
They're real.
They are very real. I went from having a staff of 5 to being one of 5. So what's happening is that you're going to see us as a commission hire. We're in the hiring stages now. I think they're in the final stages of the enforcement and inspection state, the chief of enforcement. We will have inspectors once this starts. We will have people that are going out who routinely inspect unplanned visits and who show up on unplanned visits.
So the burden is on the state, not on the local towns?
The local towns have asked if we can work with them, but we are going as their state license. We're going to go in and we're going to inspect. And I will tell you that it's a cause for concern, any diversion of anything. But anything that's grown under a license that's given out by the Cannabis Control Commission has got to be tested. And it's going to be tested at multiple points. So it's the farmer's not going to be able to just take it and give it to someone and they're going to go and they're going to do what they will with it. There are places where these have to be tested. And we've even talked about, again, all of our minutes are online. All of our public documents are there if anyone is interested in reading them. Hours and hours of enlightening conversations that we've had. We've talked about the fact that we need to ensure that this product is safe. And we've even talked about what happened in the compounding issue. But we don't want that to happen. We want people to be able to have independent licensures and to go in and test these products, whether it's the plant or it's the edibles. But talking about the edibles, there is a provision in the draft regs right now, which I hope stays and I hope prevails through the votes, that anyone who wants to manufacture an edible in Massachusetts has got to come before the commission for the type of edible. Now, if you want to make popcorn, I want you to come before us to talk about popcorn. You can make 7 flavors if you want. I'm not trying to be sort of a dictator about it. But in one of the states, and I think it's Oregon or Washington, there are 2,000 edible products on the streets. There are 2,000 products, everything from liquids to candies to cookies to brownies to popcorn and granola and anything you can think of, they can infuse THC into it. So I think that, again, from the public health perspective, I want us to be responsible in how we do this. There's been some pushback because in terms of liquids, we as a commission had said that we want 1 serving size, sort of like those 5-hour energy shot sizes. Manufacturers are telling us that it's going to be cumbersome to make. I can understand that from a manufacturing process, but I'm worried about the fact that if you have a cup like that and how many servings is that, can you maintain that? Can you properly put that away and use it appropriately? For me, the big conversation we have here now is, and I'll say this, I did this when I worked in the world of heroin addiction. On this side, I have people that have been using marijuana forever, and nothing I do is going to stop them from doing that. But on this side, I have people that have never tried it and are going to try it. And we need to be responsible in the fact of how we send this out in Massachusetts. Colorado has said that they wish they hadn't started with 10 milligrams per serving in edibles. We went to 5. There's a lot of pushback for 5. People telling me they're going to have to eat more or consume more. To me, that 5 is going to be okay for the person that's never tried this, that on July 1st wants to walk into the store and buy something. And again, it's being responsible and doing what's right for Massachusetts.
All of these products tempt the children to eat it too, because unless we warn them or put some kind of a mark there, like the poison has some symbol, like
Well,
you need to put something there on the bottle.
We are working on a
You can train the
universal
children,
symbol. We
telling
are
them
working.
These are not things that you eat.
We are working on a universal symbol. However, there are 5 universal symbols in the United States. So it's not like the poison control symbol where everyone knows poison control. But we are going to have a symbol that is going to be imprinted on the product. And if it's not able to be reasonably imprinted on, like a cookie, if you look at a chocolate chip cookie, you can't imprint it on it. It's just going to bake around it. Then it's going to have to be on the package so people know that this is a THC product. Something simple. Colorado, theirs is a diamond with the letters THC in it. That's their universal symbol. You know, anything that has that on it, then it's infused with marijuana. So we are doing the universal symbol. There's also in the draft regulations, which again are online, there is labeling information. We're mandating that they put some warning labels that DPH have right now for the medicinal side. We're going to have them put that on it. There's going to be all kinds of information on the label. If you were to take a look at the things that I suggested that we prohibit them from doing, the list is extensive, and it goes beyond the EBCC regulations for alcohol. I just think we have to be, again, we need to be responsible in how we do this. I fully appreciate the fact that some people want to use this product. They have that ability in Massachusetts. It's legal. But at the same time, I think we still have to be responsible in understanding the fact that this is new for other people, and not everyone has been doing this for a long time. There are public awareness campaigns mandated in Chapter 55, one for a health public awareness campaign and one for public safety. So the public awareness campaigns will hopefully roll out before July 1, because I think it's important to get on the front end of it. Again, Colorado told us that they should have done it sooner than they did. But technically, under the law, it has to come from revenues that come from marijuana sales, which we don't have till July 1. So I'm working with the legislature to see if there's a way to front end some of that money, and then we can pay it back. I have no problem paying back money once we get our revenues. I just want to do this the right way.
Good.
So each commissioner has a different specialty. Commissioner McBride is the public safety appointee, so she's been working a lot in the public safety
All
realm.
of these, are they going to be shared responsibility to towns and cities, or
Well,
it's
one-
going to be entirely the state funded and state is going to take care of it, so that we don't have to worry about it, whether it's being worked on our side? If we have to do it, how are we going to train our new staff, if there is any new staff or the existing staff? And who's going to fund them? And where is the training?
So right now, I can't answer those questions because the regs aren't finalized. Once the regulations are finalized and the relationship, we're still looking to give the municipalities local control. So we're still, that's why you get to opt in, or you get to opt into social consumption sites if you want social consumption sites. We don't just put them on you. That's why they still have to go before the town for zoning. You still have the ability to zone these facilities wherever it is you want to zone them. You get to determine what your main street looks like.
But
We
my-
don't do that.
My suggestion is that if that's the situation where we have to chip in ourselves to do the job, the state should mandate that the town should allocate X number of dollars from their budget. Mandate it, rather than just leaving it to the town to do it. And
That's gonna
because of
happen.
lack of funding, we may not have a staff to do the monitoring, and then we let loose the whole thing.
Right, and
So
I
we
understand.
don't want to do that.
That mandate has to come from the legislature. I can't, as a regulator,
I
do that.
think that's the thing that probably you can push it.
Oh,
take it up
yes,
to
yeah,
the-
those are the conversations that we've had. But
Funding-
also,
Funding the Board of Health is an issue that I've been tackling for a while here, and we've been fighting, so we need that.
okay,
So if new things like come in there, if it is mandated, then that the towns and cities will allocate some percentage of whatever they're getting the revenue out of it.
yep,
Yeah,
No, I understand
we can't,
that.
you know, like the meals tax goes to the general fund, it doesn't come to the Board of Health. And it's generated by the restaurants here, based on good quality of restaurants. And the entire money goes to the town general fund, and we don't get a piece of it here. We need to make sure that if the marijuana is approved here and then the tax money comes through, that certain percentage of has to come to this.
Were you a yes town? I don't even remember. Or no town?
The town voted in a small majority to support it, yes. But we were the first town to put a moratorium in place,
Okay, so your moratorium is till December?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Do you mind, Chair, if I, just so you can get home at a reasonable
Oh,
hour?
no, that's fine.
I've got a dozen questions. They're nothing in order, but
Sure.
some of them are easy and some of them might be like, oh, come on, don't ask me that. But I guess I'll hit you with the hardest one first. If you guys aren't ready, are you willing to say we're not ready and we need to delay this?
Yes.
And can you do that?
Yes.
You can do
Yes,
that?
it's
Okay.
not a, the July 1st is not mandated by the legislature. It's a sort of a self-imposed regulation.
Okay.
And I think the chairman has said it once or twice that we are on track to be ready. We are on track to do what we're supposed to be doing. But if we feel that we couldn't get it done, and we meet weekly, every Tuesday at 10:30, we meet for our public meeting, that you would have a heads up. It's not going to just come out of the blue. Because again, we're being very transparent, and people know every step of the way what we're actually doing.
No, you guys have been great about that. You mentioned something that kind of perked my ears up. So if you're going to buy recreational marijuana, and is that what we're
Adult
calling it?
use.
Adult use? Okay.
Yeah, recreational
Okay.
entices young people to
I
think it's fun.
couldn't agree more. So we're calling it adult use cannabis or marijuana?
Cannabis.
We're calling it adult use cannabis, okay, so. If adult use cannabis is purchased in Massachusetts, does it have to be manufactured and grown and infused in Massachusetts?
Yes.
Period, end of story.
Yes.
Cannot
It's
come
still
overstate.
federally illegal to go over the border.
And that was gonna be my next question. I was sat in on that meeting with Attorney General Sessions back in November last year when he was in town, and we talked about marijuana. What, and I don't expect it to happen, but what if President Trump comes back and says, nope, it's illegal? What happens in Massachusetts?
As far as we're concerned right now, because it is illegal,
It's the will of the people?
we continue to operate as we have. From my understanding, the state police have said that they're not going to prosecute. You'd have to be under federal investigation for them to come in, from my understanding, and I'm not an attorney. So my understanding is that you'd have to be under federal investigation for them to come in and prosecute.
Prosecute, or, I mean, there's been talk about, withholding, road money. There's been talk about, withholding other things or enforcing other things. Is it a real concern for the people out there, or is it a concern for the commission, or is you're going off the mandate of the people?
We're going off the mandate of the people.
people.
And because there was a meeting, Commissioner McBride requested a meeting with Attorney General Welling, and he said that there is some sort of DOJ policy that they do meet with policymakers. So we don't have that opportunity to meet with them. And Commissioner
That's a
McBride has said, if they're willing to open the door, we're willing to walk through it.
Sure, yeah.
But as what we've told right now, there is no meeting.
Huh.
But Governor Baker had met with him, from my understanding.
But they could still use the local federal authorities here to.
They can try to do that. They can use federal authorities. But I think that there was an article, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the state police had said that they weren't cooperating. And that,
I've heard
from that, in a lot of towns, I think Boston police had said
I mean, they could send the National Guard to take care of it.
They could.
they could.
They could. Very.
And I think that's where the questions are, right? Is that they could do that because again, this is a Schedule I drug, as the federal government is concerned. So every state is looking at the same thing we are. And I think someone in Alaska even resigned once this all happened because they were uncomfortable or something. But every state is under this. But the medicinal is legal. The medicinal side, we're talking adult use.
Getting back to, we talked about the banks, and I'll take two and put it into one. We talked about it's an all-cash business in Massachusetts because federally the banks can't get into drug trafficking. Is there a dollar amount that you can spend in a store? Can you walk in and buy $10,000 worth of adult cannabis, or?
It's not a dollar amount, it's a weight amount.
It's a weight amount. Okay. And what is that weight?
I think you're allowed to have an ounce in Massachusetts.
That's per day or?
You're allowed to have an ounce. That's the
Right, but
question.
you could
That
walk
was-
10 times and then
The question,
shop.
yeah, and the question, or you could go different places, and so that's one of the questions that we have for next week is there one centralized database that if I go to Ashland and then I go to Fitchburg, can I get,
And that was gonna be my question. So I go into a store hypothetically, and I'll use our backyard. I go to Framingham and I buy and the store can only sell me an ounce. Am I correct? That's all they can sell
from
me
my understanding, for adult use,
for adult use, not for.
not for medicinal?
Right. So I go to Framingham, hypothetically, and buy an ounce of marijuana. And then I hypothetically come to Ashland and buy an ounce of marijuana. But I then have to, assuming I didn't consume any of it from my drive from
Or
Framingham.
gift it.
Or gift it, yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Or accidentally drop it and somebody else picked it up or something. But then I have 2 ounces of, in my
Yes.
car. Is that 2 ounce, am I in possession of 2 ounces? And
Yes.
am I then in jeopardy?
Yes.
What about if I buy a joint that's 1 ounce, which would be a very big joint, but if I buy.
Well, an
one-
ounce is like 36, I think, for
Right,
them.
right. But I'm just, just trying to grab the conversation. If I buy 1 ounce and I buy a brownie, can you sell me an ounce of,
Not in the same place,
Not
from
in the
my,
same
from my
place.
understanding. That could be wrong. That's what that's what to determine next week.
okay.
Because I also come from, again, I did a lot of work in heroin, so we all have the PMP, the Prescription Monitoring Program. So if I go to a doctor in Framingham and then I go again in Ashland, the doctors are going to check and see where I've gotten my scripts and if I've filled them. I would like the same type of thing. I don't know if that exists in the world of adult use, but that's one of the questions that I have is, can we create that? Because again, you get to home grow, so you're going to also have, if you're
Right.
growing at home and you have that as well, that's added to it.
You had mentioned the testing. And from a Board of Health standpoint, I think that's probably the biggest concern of all of us here in this room. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear how many layers of testing that you're interpreting. But, we inspect a lot of restaurants that the food is grown right, it's packaged right, and it's all done, and then it gets into the restaurant, it's not handled right. And I'm not saying anybody would do this, but this is unknown territory. It passes all your inspections, and we were talking offline before the meeting started, you're finding stuff is laced with fentanyl now. How do we know that a store isn't changing it once it's passed all the regulations, shows up at their door, and they change it? And it's going to lead to a vaping question I have, and it's also going to lead to an
Well,
evidence question.
by design, I mean, these stores are supposed to handle it with all the sanitation requirements that any type of facility would have. And so that's where our inspectors come from. And there's a list of punitive things that happen if you fail our inspections. But again, once most of them are in closed packages that you are not opening.
Okay.
And so if you open it, you're going to know that it's been opened, which means that it's not there. So
And the edibles have to come in a sealed package?
yes,
All the edibles?
and it has to be childproof.
Okay.
And so and again, those are the little things that we're taking, great strides in doing to again prevent diversion. We don't want diversion. And the packaging's not going to look like, a candy bar, or it's going to look like something a kid would pick up, and you're not allowed to have, if it's the gummies, you're not allowed to have it look like people, animals, sports equipment, like anything you're going to feed your child, like I guess the Paw Patrol gummies are popular now, or something for kids. That's not going to look like those. They're going to just be awkward shapes. And so, again, that's going to be tested, and it can be investigated, and it can be enforced from there. What happens when that leaves? What happens when you take the bottle of wine home
Right,
when they've
exactly.
sealed it
Yep.
and you get it in the car? If someone opens it, then
It's a whole new ballgame.
it's a whole new ball game. And I think that's really where, we also need to ask people to have personal responsibility with this product. I mean, there's one thing, and I've heard through question 4, is that we want to responsibly consume. We want to responsibly consume. Well, then you need to be responsible citizens and then help us ensure that this does not get to the teenager and it doesn't get to the child. Because your question on vaping, I'm surprised your school system hasn't said anything. I've been approached by principals and superintendents to say that their suspension rates are up because of vaping in schools. And not just vaping, but putting THC in the cartridges. So this is all going to be part of it. And it's coming down the pike.
Can you put marijuana in the vaping cartridge?
You can put THC in vaping cartridges. And they sell vaping cartridges at the stores.
Right.
There are no plans
that's a
for
huge
people to
concern.
open up a restaurant, sit down there and then unpack it and serve it.
Well, there are restaurants that want to operate where they infuse it into the food.
Yeah.
So they're not going to open it and serve it, but they're going to infuse it into the food.
But
Butter
are
is
they-
very
are they-
popular.
Are they
You-
forbidden to open and serve?
only if you're licensed
Would
for
that
that
fall
for
under
that
his
type.
purview then, as the food inspector?
I believe part of it would. They'd have to get a license from us, and you'd be able to inspect them.
Oh boy, isn't that gonna be fun?
I believe in East Hampton, they've done dinners, special event dinners where they do that, and they time when you get your courses.
Well, that's a
This
good
is why I was sending that they need to
Right.
mandate some funds.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Otherwise,
That leads me into my next, I only got 3 left, and you're doing great, thank you.
Okay. I've only been doing this since September, so
You're doing
you
great.
gotta cut me
You're
some
do-
slack.
You're doing great. You're doing great. And thank you. I'm sure you saw the story about the Worcester Club that opened up a private club. There is nothing to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I often am. There's nothing to stop somebody from Ashland of doing that in Ashland, opening up a private club in Ashland, not selling it, but you can come to this private club and you can consume adult cannabis. And there's
Yes.
nothing the forefathers of this town could do about it.
Because I believe they're operating under a 501c7 special club, because you're paying dues. That does not come under our purview at all.
Are you looking to close that loophole? Or?
We don't have jurisdiction over that. So
Okay.
you would have to either, I believe, ask the legislators or whoever's regulating the private clubs to do that. That was the first thing that I got the call from Worcester, is that, there was a loophole in our regulations. We don't regulate that. Any social consumption site that is going to open, should we allow the licenses, because we haven't even fully approved the licenses yet, they would have to come to us for a license. You would have to buy the product on the premises. You can't bring in your own. And that was a really big part of our conversations during the first go round of all this, is that we want to ensure you're buying the product again from a licensed facility, because we can then control the product and the quality of the product. So what's happening in Worcester, although he's finding a loophole in that law, he's letting you bring it in. You're not buying it from him.
Right.
So he's not licensed under the Cannabis Control Commission. They come under a different regulatory authority. And it's not to try to pass the buck. That's what he's operating under. We wouldn't
Smart
have
businessman.
we wouldn't have a consumer we don't have the consumption site where you're paying dues. Once you start to pay dues, you become a private club. And so the ones that have been proposed under our draft regulations are not the same thing.
but any trade happens between two club members is illegal.
Yes. And apparently he has said that if he sees that happening, he'll take action.
But
But again, it comes from the
Is there any
street.
jurisdiction for the Worcester police, or hypothetically the Ashland police, to go into that club and say, hey, you have to have probable cause, right?
You do, it's a private club.
It's a private club, right?
If I can, John, can I
Sure.
just go off with that question you
Sure,
had there?
please.
And Jennifer, if you can help. Ashland is one of several communities that have indoor air quality control regulations for smoke in private clubs. And our definition of smoke is, it says any non-tobacco product as well, designed to be combusted and inhaled. Do these regulations apply if these private clubs come into town?
Well, my understanding is that they should, because you have your own air quality controls for whatever comes into town. But I wouldn't know, I couldn't definitely say yes for the private clubs because I don't regulate them.
Yeah,
But-
right now, they can't have smoking in them. The Board of Health regulates any combusted or inhaled product.
Yes.
They were set up for tobacco originally, but they were very general.
And
they
that- and
defined
that's-
smoke very general.
Right, and that's one of the questions that, has come into play, that if you allow consumption sites and you have we have a smoke-free workplace law in Massachusetts, does that violate the smoke-free workplace law? And then, so now we have a working group that is going to be working until, I believe, July, and then will give us until October to promulgate those regulations. So the thing that you also have to remember, and I'll get to the rest of your questions, I promise, is that the commission is not required to roll out every license at the same time. So with the smoke-free workplace, we had a concern, we're gonna have a working group. Once we get the report, we'll have a couple months to digest it and take action. So it's not like this all has to be done at once, and that's where you hear the governor and his cabinet's members say, slow down, do the basics, let's get this under control, and then do everything else. There's a misconception that it all has to happen at once. And while we talked about that in December, and you see the draft regs have mixed use, primary use, and all that, those aren't the final regs. If we go back and decide no, then it doesn't have to happen. If we go back and decide yes, we'll keep it, then it will move forward.
I think that's the best news I've heard so far tonight.
So, but I think because of the speed at which we're working, people don't quite understand the authority that we have. So we can change our minds. We can say that, I voted against delivery only. That's the big concern that the governor and the speaker and them have expressed to us. I didn't want you to deliver just without a brick and mortar to people's homes. I have a concern that with the 29 disproportionately affected communities that we've identified in those reports, 4, if you take out Boston, are college towns. That's a concern to me. I have a college-age stepson who is going to live off campus. He's not yet 21, and if someone 21 in that house is doing that, again, there's the diversion. I'm not so naive to think that this doesn't happen, but my job is to mitigate that as much as possible and to minimize that. So you'll hear us probably talk about delivery only. I can imagine it will come back up. I can imagine consumption sites will come back up. I can imagine mixed use will come back up. But given the fact that I can't collaborate with my fellow commissioners, I won't know that till Monday.
And that was going to be, you said the first meeting is on Monday. Where is that going to be?
At the State House.
What time?
10 to 3.
10 to 3?
So we have been very fortunate to have partners in state government letting us use their space because I know we've bounced around a lot for our meetings. There are also organizations I think Mass Rec Council, they live stream it. There are people live streaming us all the time, so I'm sure if you Google it, you can find a place that's live streaming us. We don't have those capabilities yet, but I know
We live stream
people
here.
are.
We live stream. Now, there are 2 other meetings after that? Are they both going to, all 3
Tuesday and
going to
Wednesday.
be? They're going to all be at the State House?
Nope. So Tuesday we go back to the Gaming Commission, which is where our offices are right now, and then Wednesday we go back to the State House.
Okay.
It's sort of like get what you can.
It's probably not a Board of Health issue, but it might be from my blood pressure. Signage. As
There's-
you drive around town.
There's a lot of advertising restrictions. We've been told that we're going too far with restrictions. I don't personally agree with that. I was responsible for the edibles, the advertising, and the potency. So I have a keen interest in these. We do want to make, if there's 85% of your intended audience is children, you cannot have certain things there. You are probably, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, concerned with the weed maps.
I'm very concerned about
They are not licensed under the Cannabis Control Commission. They come under local advertising. So we are not regulating weed maps. They're not asking us for a license for anything. That's why they've been able to have the billboards that they do everywhere that you go. I know in some towns when there's been pushback, they've been taken down. I've heard that Route 9 in Westboro is near some sort of indoor park for kids, that there's one on the highway.
Sky Zone over there.
That is a concern. So we have no intention of allowing this to be in places where 85% of your population, intended population, are children.
But can you have a flashing neon
No, you can't have the
cannabis
flashing.
sign out front?
You can't use the flower, the leaf.
Okay.
You can't have the flashing neon sign. You can't have the loudspeaker. At election time, some people hire those things that go around with the loud. You can't have that. You can't.
Strobe lights,
No.
flashing lights? and stuff?
There's nothing like that. It's going to be very minimal. Even more so than a liquor store. I mean, you don't see a beer can on the front of the liquor store. You might see a Bud Light sign, but you don't see like a beer can. So you're not going to see the marijuana leaf on the front of these stores. They have logos. They're allowed to use their logo, but the logo can't be anything that pertains to that. And they're also, again, looking at where do you want this? Is this your main street? Is this going to be in places where families are going to see it? I've seen some storefronts where It's actually funny because I have an affinity for shoes. One looked like a high-end shoe store, the front of the window, and then when you went in the back, that's where the products were. So the products weren't in the front of the window. There was just bookcases with different things on the bookcases. So they're very creative. And the one in Brookline, Netta, is in an old bank. They kept the historical designation. You walk in there, you feel like you're in a bank.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
But
yeah.
the tellers are now point of sale, registers. So there's been a lot of work with regards to packaging, labeling, advertising, and awareness campaigns.
And my final question, and thank you for indulging me on all 12. Our neighbor next door, Framingham, the new city of Framingham.
Yes.
I was talking with the chief of police and the captain of the police department and the mayor on Sunday. And July 1st, they're looking forward to, having marijuana in their town. They're looking at it from a revenue source. And it might not be a fair question, so I apologize. What do we as our local Board of Health have to be concerned about July 1st and our next door neighbor that we throw a rock and hit is going to be selling adult cannabis, and we're still on a moratorium until December. And it's a complex question, and I think that's why I say it to the last. I mean, Framingham will probably be getting revenue, and some town leaders will say, look at all the revenue we're raising, it's great, and the Cannabis Control Commission said it was safe, and they're regulating it, and it's all good. So, and then the skeptic in me, and I'm just speaking for myself here, said, let's see, let's take a approach, but Mark gets a call, and God forbid, there's a problem, somebody consumes too much, and I know you could probably overdose from it. What do we need? What does this Board of Health need to be concerned about that our neighbor next door is ready and we're not?
Well, I think one of the downfalls economically is that you may not have the opportunity for someone to want to come into Ashland because you have a moratorium and they'll go to Framingham, which means you may lose out on people coming here. Now that's good or bad, but economically that wouldn't be on par with what Framingham's going to do.
Right.
If you ask your police and your first responders, I can almost guarantee they're probably getting those calls already that
Yes.
people have overconsumed. And to me, that is a cost burden on cities and towns. And I've heard from my local, our ambulances in our fire department, so we don't have a separate EMS system that we use in Leominster. They've gotten those calls. And, the one thing I do say to people, and this is why the public awareness campaign is so crucial, is that when you get a call for drugs or a possible overdose or, someone who's non-responsive or whatever you call it, you send the contingency, right? In our case, you get a fire engine, you get an ambulance, and you get probably 4 firefighters. That's a cost burden. How many times a day does that ambulance go out for that call? And that also ties them up to not go to other places if they need to respond someplace else. And the truth of the matter is that when you overconsume cannabis, you are not going to Narcan them. Narcan doesn't work. So there's a whole other protocol, water, oxygen laying down, doing whatever. So there's nothing they can really fix when they get there. And even if you go to the ER, they're probably going to do the same thing for you. That's a cost burden. So I would ask your police and fire now and see if they're already doing that. I can imagine they're already getting those calls. Because what's happening is that because it's legal, because Question 4 is passed, people feel as though that this is just a free-for-all. And some people don't know how to use it. Again, my public awareness campaign would be great with this. And so they are using, not understanding 5 milligrams versus 15 milligrams versus 25 milligrams. And so that causes a reaction. Having said that, you will have the product in Ashland. You're going to have the product in
already have
Ashland. People are not going to just stay out because you have the moratorium. I think moratoriums are more economics than anything. Because you're still going to deal with the social effects of it. You're still going to deal, I would ask your schools. I bet your schools, even your middle schools, already have this in the schools on some level.
More than we'd like to acknowledge.
Yeah,
Yep.
and again,
It's
I
here,
come
yeah.
I come from the world of, nobody wants to talk about heroin addiction. I used to talk about it like the weather, and I used to say to parents, what don't you want to know? What are you so afraid to ask? Because in the end, you're going to know it all, but it's going to be too late. So again,
We have to talk about
I
heroin addiction.
ask
We have
ask
to.
people parents to talk to their kids about THC, to talk to them about vaping, to talk to them about all sorts of things. Because the reality is, while there is some research being done, it's not governmental research because it's federally illegal. So we have all these places that are doing this wonderful research, but we're not getting it done mostly through the feds. And so we need to be aware of that. But I think, you're going to have the same effects that Framingham's going to have. You're just not going to reap the taxes from it.
Isn't it prudent for the government to spend some money to do the research rather than industry pushing their product through doing researches which in their favor?
I do. I think
do.
so. I think it's crucial. But again, we're fortunate here in Massachusetts to have a lot of private universities that if they can get some people with the money to fund these things.
Yeah, but who is funding it? That's important. If the industry is the one which is funding it, and then the
Well, you have
research
industry.
product sides with the industry's decision if they want to do it, then no good research.
Well, you have industry and then you have prevention. Like, there's a lot of prevention folks out there that are looking to talk about the human brain and the fact that you're 25 when your brain develops, and there's a reason why, we shouldn't be saying 21, we should be saying 25, and you don't want 18-year-olds to do it. There's the whole psychological piece of this. I mean, as well as I do, that we have this conversation every time we talk about bad decisions, tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, what have you. And that's just the piece that we have, that's the hurdle that we have to overcome. But I think when it comes to July 1, again, we don't even know how robust this is going to be. One, because no one's growing it unless you're a medicinal facility right now. So the cultivators are not growing it right now. And that's another question that we
How long
have.
does that take?
No one is growing it on books.
A cycle is 3 months.
3 months.
Well, that they can fund the retail stores with. No one's growing that. Apparently a cycle is 3 months. So again, do we have the conversation
So
that
April 1st.
maybe cultivators should get licenses first to allow them to grow, to put them on a playing field with the medicinal cultivators? That has to be determined, because again, if they're not growing on June 1 or July 1, you don't get your product until October?
Yeah, 3 months. 3 months.
And so we have to take all of this into account. The other thing too is that we don't know how many people are going to apply for licenses. We have no idea how many licenses are going to come to us.
And who handles that? You?
We do.
You
we
process, so you could get hit day one with hypothetically 300 requests.
Yes, but
Boom.
we just
And
contracted
you're 5 people.
we just contracted with a licensing processing agency, but we will have a director of licensing, and the 5 commissioners will have to make the decision. So yes, we're going to be
Busy.
very busy.
Are the medicinal distributors going to be able to cross over and do recreational?
That's the question, and that's where your town council comes into play to determine that. Again, we're going to have our final regs next week. Well, we're going to have our discussion on our final regs next week. We'll know more next week.
So what sort of safe shelf life is there for these products?
I think it depends on how you, on what form it's in. If it's a flower, it's different than an edible. But from what I'm told in the industry, they only supply enough for I think a couple months or something, and then it just keeps getting.
So what happens in the seasons, winter seasons, when it doesn't grow or doesn't produce enough?
Well, you're talking about outside cultivation. There are people that are going to cultivate inside, and they'll just keep doing.
Supply, there
We're
will be
t-
enough supply.
What's
Yeah.
the mill town out your way that's talking about converting the old mills into
Fitchburg is going to
Fitchburg.
have 5 cultivators, but those are inside.
inside? Right.
So apparently, farmers can get probably, I think they said 1 cycle in a year. So determining how much land that they have to grow on and how much they can cultivate will determine the yield that they have. Whereas your indoor cultivators, it is a very methodical process what they do.
They also have to have safety net built in, security net built in.
Oh, it's you can't get to the front door into
No,
these
no,
facilities.
The indoor is fine, but when the farmers have
Well,
open window.
It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
fine though, because it's like Fort Knox, yeah.
Oh,
But
yeah.
how do you Fort Knox a farm though? That's the thing.
Well, it depends
Barbed wire
because they
fences
say
and-
that it happens now. I mean, because we're talking about fencing, and then I was told that it impedes the migration of animals. But then apparently they use big fences for apple orchards so that the animals don't get to the apples. So you could do it the same way as we would do out in a big apple orchard. Again,
Think about
horticulture
that,
and
we got
farming is a
high
big
bunnies
deal.
and deers running around.
It would be interesting. So there's a lot of different things that have to happen, and I feel bad saying I don't know, because I'm not used to saying I don't know, but we will know more once the deliberations are finished next week.
Mark, is there anything anything specific you want to
Yeah, I'm
ask?
just curious, as it relates to the licensing units and so forth. Presently, you have the Bureau handling medical marijuana, correct?
DPH has that, but we will absorb them by December.
You'll absorb that bureau into your division, so will that be both for medical marijuana and adult use?
By December 31st, the latest, we should have all of it under our purview.
Okay, so and then, will that be
That's mandated by Chapter 55,
is
though.
it an advisement from DPH? I mean, they came out and spoke to us about medical marijuana a year ago. Will they be all switched over into your department, so they still will have that background?
They will.
Because they do
So
the
everyone
same
who's
thing.
over there will come over to the Cannabis Control Commission, and then will have authority over both medicinal and adult
And
use.
so if I needed to contact
Yes.
and get information, there'll be phone numbers to contact representatives for our area, so we're not left out more or less without not knowing who to call.
Yes, and you'll also, I can try to make this happen, but most likely you're gonna know when we actually absorb that program. It's gonna take a process, and that's why it's funny, because, it's like we're in the circus. We're juggling, rolling out adult use, trying to take over medicinal, trying to ensure everybody has what they have. It's all happening at the same time.
And I was just looking up the responsible vendor programs in Colorado. It's interesting. Are we starting to see vendors coming in that are interested in these vendor programs?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of people coming in from out of state to do a lot of different things. I've been told from the West that people are trying to buy farmland out there. I've met with people who have said to me, oh, we started in Colorado, now we're here in Massachusetts. Being a legislator and coming from an area where historically our unemployment percentages are higher than the state average, I'm very aware of what happens when other people come into our states and take over. Our people don't get hired. And so in some of these provisions where out-of-state businessmen are coming in, we have residency requirements that you're going to get a priority if you're from Massachusetts. Because we want you to be committed to your community. We want you to live here. We want you to have a stake in this. Not just sort of take up the reins, come from another state, plop down what you did, and not hire a lot of our people. Because again, this whole thing was predicated on the economic boom that was supposed to happen, right? So in my mind, and this is why I presented it to the commission, if that's the case, and we have disproportionately affected communities from Massachusetts, then let's make sure Massachusetts people have a stake in it. We all hear about the adage that people from my neck of the woods go to New Hampshire to buy things because there's no sales tax. Well, people from Rhode Island go to Attleboro because the sales tax is less than that in Rhode Island. So, I don't really want to see someone who's in Rhode Island owning the business here and going home to Rhode Island. I'd like to see them stay here. So in some of the provisions, there are residency requirements for Massachusetts residents.
And I'll comment on that if I can ask one more question. That's a good shout out because, that's a good point because the shout out I heard when I went to a hearing almost 5-6 years ago in Worcester, it might have been for medical marijuana or legalization, where many people packed in that library that wanted the business to be here in Massachusetts. And they said, the big industry is just going to roll us over. So it's good to hear that at least as it relates to that, Massachusetts business their interest is being kept in this. The other question I had was related to the food that we discussed, house parties. I was just looking it up on the internet. Out in Colorado, they have house parties and hors d'oeuvres and so forth. That type of party I wouldn't regulate. The caterer I may, if that caterer was going, but if it's a house party, it's nothing we can do. It's like having your own chef in the house. But then again, will the food industry be getting involved in respect to restaurants offering these type of foods? And if they do, is it the State Division of Food at the DPH that's going to be in charge of this, that will be telling the locals the local food inspectors how to handle it? Or
So
I'm at a loss, to be honest
from
with you.
from for the first part of
You're
it,
in pain before even consuming it.
you live in the dream, huh? So to start off, the Cannabis Control Commission has not approved 1 or 3 day licenses, which means that you are not going to have, like you do for alcohol, the 1 day licenses where you can bring it in and do what you will with it. There's a lot of questions. First of all, when it comes under our regulations, if we do consumption sites at all, you cannot sell alcohol in a spot where you're selling cannabis. And so, people were using the adage of the wedding. Well, either you're going to have a dry wedding, or you're going to have a cannabis wedding, or you're not going to have a cannabis wedding because you're going to have alcohol. And then again, the underage factor comes in. So if you're going to have an establishment, are you not going to allow people under a certain age to come in, or are you going to have a certain place where people go to consume and they don't consume in the big place? There's so many nuances to this thing.
I never even thought of it.
Can I just piggyback the question? What if you're in a strip mall? Can you have a package store here and the cannabis store here?
They have to be two different businesses.
No, but can they be neighbors?
Oh, they can be neighbors, but you can't consume
Okay.
in a cannabis shop with alcohol being served. So again, the place in Worcester, you can't sell alcohol if you're selling cannabis.
Okay.
The loophole he's using is that you can bring it in, and then there's alcohol. So
So he can
if-
serve
if
alcohol
you
in
come
his
under-
private
if you
club,
come under
and you can
us,
smoke your
you
cannabis.
can't do
there.
both.
Can't do both. Okay.
Go back to the food.
The way
where-
the way that some of it works in the restaurants, my understanding is that you do have the same sanitary requirements under the Board of Health that you would with anything if it's a restaurant. House parties, I haven't heard too much about house parties. I mean, again, it's the caterer that would come in and do it. I've heard from people in East Hampton that have done actual dinners in a restaurant. It's a private event, so they would be regulated, in my opinion, the same way. But I'm not an attorney, so that we'd have to figure that out.
So they will be guiding us as time goes on
Yeah.
on how to handle. What worries me the most is if someone overdosed, or not overdosed, but whatever the word is.
They overconsume.
Overconsumed, and then you wonder if it's food poisoning or is it overconsumption? Well,
That's
it's
going to
gonna
be
a
well. That brings
tricky
you into this.
situation.
That brings into the same conversation of drug driving. So, is the person under the influence, or is it just in their system? Because there's no roadside test to test for this yet, and it stays in your system for up to 30 days.
How about the employment? If it stays in the person's body that long.
That
You go to work on Monday and you were at a party on Saturday. Has that been figured out for the employees?
well, that's gonna have to be determined by employers. There are some that have no tolerance, which they're entitled to do. I've asked that of some of the places that I've gone to, specifically the dispensaries and the cultivators of marijuana, and they said that you're not allowed to have any impairment. So you have to be able to do your job and you're not impaired. And if they feel you are impaired, must be behavioral, because that's really the only way you can determine it right now, then they will force you to go home.
Any word on how the state's gonna handle this at their employment level?
Not yet.
That came up a question when
Oh, okay.
a coworker knew that you were coming tonight because we were discussing it. The question, outdoor smoking. Technically, by law,
You can't smoke.
well, you can go outside your door and smoke. Like in my office building, people often go in and out and they smoke outside, and they've got those ashtrays outside, and you walk by and they're doing. So if you're out there consuming adult cannabis, which is legal if you have less than an ounce, and you go back into work, is there anything an employer can say to you? If you're doing your job
For adult use.
for adult use, yes.
No, the big question is the medicinal side, not the adult use. The adult
Right.
use is kind of cut and dry, in my opinion. The medicinal side is not, because if
right.
people, but again, people have to take medications all the time for different things. You still can't be intoxicated while you're at work, and that's the employment stuff that we're gonna have to talk about. But that's the difference between medicinal and people saying, well, I have a card and I have to use. Well, doesn't mean you can be impaired at work. And even the cultivation facilities that I've been in, and I've asked the marijuana cultivation facilities, what's your drug policy? What do you do? And they said,
That's an
you
interesting
can't
question.
be impaired. You have to be able to do your job. And don't forget, they are under such tight regulation that, and you could be here all night talking about this, but so the plant that they start with, they don't end with, right? So they take the buds off and they do what they do. the waste has to weigh a certain number. So that when you take what you took off of it and what the waste is, the number adds up to what you had. So they're so regulated that their waste going out has to have a certain weight to determine everything is accounted for and nothing's missing.
You brought out another question. I have already
Old
went
much.
too over what I
Say, we're gonna keep you here all night. I think.
Quick question on the waste, because who controls the waste
And where's it go?
and where's it go?
They have a way of and I can probably get it on how it's disposed of, but it's disposed of in a way. I think some people like put it through a shredder like you do
Paper
trees and
shredder,
stuff like that, because it's just a vine. I mean, it's a plant, right? So it's what that is. But there are ways to dispose of it because they do.
But there's so many hemp products out there nowadays. Does that become another issue that you guys have to tackle then
We
too?
will eventually, I think.
You will have to
Yes.
eventually.
Thank you.
More discoveries, more problems.
Opportunities, more
I don't know if
opportunities.
this falls under the purview, but I was just wondering, because you had said that there were different tax benefits. If you're a yes or a no town,
Not
You know
tax
what-
benefits. It's different protocols.
What-
Different process for you to allow recreational. So if you're a no town,
yeah,
it's a different process than if you were a yes town. But not tax benefits.
okay. So
There's a push to
what-
say if you voted no, you shouldn't get anything.
any-
But that
okay.
hasn't. The legislature would have to determine that, and
Where's
I
that
can
push from?
I can think that people that want to get rid of it,
Hmm.
people that just don't think that if you're not going to participate, then you shouldn't get the tax benefits for it.
Is there a general, expected revenue or guess? that
63 million, I believe, in the first year they said.
63 million? And how, that just gets divvied up by population?
Nope.
63 million tax revenue.
Yes.
63 million dollars.
So in Chapter 55, the legislature mandates where this money needs to go. Part of it's the general fund, part of it is an education prevention program, part of it is there's like 4 different places that it has to go. So that comes under the legislature's purview.
And the tax on, has that been established?
What?
The tax percentage?
Yes, it's 17, and you can do the extra 3 in your town.
You can do 17 and an extra 3. And it's an automatic 3, or can you graduate it? Like
No, it's
to
3. You
to
can,
entice a person to come to your town. Hey, I'll only charge you 2 if you come to my
Oh
town.
no! It actually,
know
believe it
what
or
I'm
not, I've been told that these places are willing to pay. The problem that companies are having right now is that the community host agreements are getting sort of egregious in their minds. Is that you can do up to the 3% of what the revenue is, but then they're saying, some places are saying, hey, you want to kick in for another police officer? Hey, you want to give to Little League? Hey, you want to do? So
Kinda
they're-
like the
they're-
casino mitigation.
They're kind of going
Right.
over and above. That it's been
And that's legal?
well, right now it's under medicinal. It's not my purview. I don't have
Okay.
that. So there was we were in Danvers on Wednesday, I believe it was, and people were asking if we could have sort of a standard community host agreement that a town could pull from, and that you just sort of fill out and make it that easy. Because I guess the negotiations
get
are
our
getting
assistant.
contentious.
There you go.
Right.
There might be your Board of Health money.
There you go. There you go, Katie.
Need a detail.
Well, that's another thing too. When you talk about the details, is that at least for medicinal, some places have allowed them to come in. Now in Brookline, where Netta is, they were there first, and a school went in next to them, a preschool, and a lot of the parents had said, there's a police detail here all day long, and it's on Main Street in Brookline, and that your 3-year-old is not going to know. Because there's nothing on the walls. It's a old bank, and you need a license to get in, and if you don't have it, you don't get in. That these kids were not going to know what was happening next door, and that the school has been fine next to it. So there's the pros and cons. I guess people have to determine for their own cities and towns what they think.
What about hours of operation? Have you guys tackled that?
They usually,
If you're in a town that allows 24-hour retail, are
No.
you allowed to be open 24 hours?
I believe so. I believe it goes by the retail of the town, but I don't
Which we're
know.
not.
I don't know for sure yet. A lot of these places don't stay open. At least medicinally, they don't stay open 24 hours.
No, I'm not talking about medicinal. I'm talking
Yeah.
about, adult, yeah.
But I can ask that. I don't think that's been brought up. Not that I know of.
Can I ask another question, if I may?
Sure.
Odor control. It's odorous, and how I can handle it on a general nuisance. We could have a facility open up near residential or mixed use in business and residential near each other, and they say, I'm tired of smelling marijuana, cannabis. Has there been any discussion on the odors that can be emitted from marijuana or cannabis?
Not that I've had yet, because we haven't fully approved mixed-use licenses. I know the problem is the streets, and that's the big push for people to want consumption sites, is so people are not on the streets consuming. And the reasoning for that has been, if you live in an apartment and your landlord doesn't let you smoke it, or if you have kids at home and you don't want to consume it there, if you are in federal housing, if you're in subsidized housing and it's illegal to consume there, you should have be able to have a place to go. Tourists can't do that in their hotel rooms.
I'm just thinking of the general odor, not from the smoke. When there's a facility that had already a potential facility for this town, and there's some residents nearby, they live in a business
But what
district.
type of facility though? Because no facilities can you smoke yet.
Yeah, no, I think just, the sale. So,
There shouldn't be the odor outside if you're just selling it packaged.
packaged. But if it's all.
The problem would
I've been
be
to the
that,
Boston Common. When they
well,
have
they're
the-
consuming it. That
They're
the problem
consuming
would be
it,
the
yeah.
consumption, not necessarily. Because I mean, even when I was at the dispensaries, you don't smell it outside. I mean, they're so far inside that
That's fine, as long as, I'm thinking, if I get a nuisance call, how do you handle it?
you're probably gonna get nuisance calls for houses in neighborhoods before you get a nuisance call for a business, unless consumption sites are allowed and someone's not doing the air filtration and ventilation system.
And then what do you do?
Well, that's the thing. They're supposed to
Follow the
have.
law.
They're supposed to have enough, just like cigar bars. You're not supposed to be smelling the cigars from a cigar bar. This isn't supposed to be any different.
Have you gotten any different response back from the state police versus local police?
No.
Or has it been pretty
It's been
consistent?
pretty consistent,
Pretty consistent.
from my understanding. Yep.
And to KG's, I thought, good question. And if we're going to bring in $63 million worth of revenue, has your commission talked about anything of diverting money to local boards of health and or public safety, police and fire?
We don't
That's the
divert the money.
legislature.
The legislature does. We have to take in the taxes, and we have to self-fund our public awareness campaign if there's money left over. But we also have to send it back to the general fund and to where they're saying it has to
Can I
go.
ask just one more? I like that, the public awareness campaign. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So section 51 of chapter 55 requires that we do two public awareness campaigns. One is in public safety, and one is more public health, edibles, use, misuse, consumption, things like that. And so under the mandate, it's supposed to be funded through the revenues that we collect for the purchase of cannabis products. However, there's been quite a lot of interest in doing the public campaign early, and so I've requested money from the legislature to essentially borrow until we can then pay them back. And so we're waiting. There's a supplemental budget that we're waiting to hear on if we're going to get any of that money. That money would then go through an RFR process, or working in conjunction with DPH in an RFR process. A company would come in, they'd bid on the job, come in and do the campaign. Colorado has Good to Know Colorado. I think Nevada has No MJ, like KNOW MJ. There's awareness campaigns in each of the states. The thing that I'm most concerned about is, when does this get
Started.
put out into the
Yeah.
communities? Because I don't think it really works after July 1. I think it works before July 1. And so that's my big push. And
Can
I have some.
Can I make a
Have you-
motion to that then?
Have-
Not to have you write another letter?
Before you do that.
Yep, okay.
How do you tackle this, or give this education to the most vulnerable population? School age students or?
Well, there's difference. There's every state's been different. There's been pilot programs for children. There's awareness campaigns for parents. There's awareness campaigns for teachers. So it would sort of be a cumbersome campaign where you would be on. There'd be a lot of interactive online. There'd be some social media. Because don't forget, or you wouldn't know this, but one of the other things that we prohibited is that you can't have anything cannabis related pushed towards text messages on cell phones. So if I'm a cannabis consumer and I'm getting alerts from an app, and I change my number, that can't be pushed to my old number. It has to stay with the app, with the person. So we make provisions for things like that. But social media is a piece of it. You would see ads on TV. When the DPH has done these campaigns before with opiates. If you remember the opiate campaign, Channel 5 uses their personalities to sort of do some PSAs, things like that. Just different things like that. And so it would be a very specialized company or working with DPH to come in and do it. They're the experts. We can just say where we want it to be directed. But Section 51 of Chapter 55 mandates what we do, like what we talk about and where we go with it.
My motion was going to be, I think it would be wise, just in my opinion, that we send a letter to the Senate President and the Speaker, encouraging them to be receptive to releasing those funds early for the education purposes.
Yeah, they can. You know, there's a lot of legislative leaders on Beacon Hill that are in favor of this. I mean, Representative Kane has been very big on it. Senator Lewis has been very supportive of it. Certainly, there's concerns. 78 legislators signed a letter recently by Representative Kane. So
from Shrewsbury.
there are people that are concerned about what's going to be in our communities.
We've had Representative Kane to a couple of the marijuana forums that we've had throughout
Yes.
here. She's
Hannah's
very
great.
hardworking on that.
She is. She's
Very
great.
hardworking on that. But so my motion would be that we send a letter to both the Senate President and the Speaker saying, hey, got to release these funds. Because I agree with you 1,000%. I mean, if it's July 1 and then we start doing it, it's too late.
It is, and again, you know, we're in a time crunch. I mean, we're trying to stand up an agency. We're trying to get the applications process ready, roll out what we have to do, and also educate people at the same time. So Massachusetts is very much in a position of a lot of activity that, you know, come 6 months from now will be in action, I guess.
Make the chair to draft himself.
Yeah,
then
that's who sends the letters. Yeah.
You seconded it, right? All in favor?
second
it.
Aye. Okay,
So now you got 2 letters. Right?
okay, that's great. Great.
Any other questions from anybody? So hopefully I've
So coming
helped.
from the legislature to this, it's got to be a whirlwind experience, huh?
It is. I'm operating under open meeting laws, and I can't collaborate with my new colleagues, and and I don't get.
We know a lot
I don't-
about open meeting law
I don't
here.
get to say where the money goes. I'm now just regulating an industry, and you know it's a lot different though because, you know, one of the big concerns when I got appointed to this, and it was put into media and it was put into the press, I voted no. And was I going to put my personal preferences?
As did your chair, right?
As did, I think, 3 or 4 of us voted no. Were we going to put our personal preferences in front of the job at hand? And I think as a regulator, you know that it's here and it's going to be here. So regardless of what you think of it, you know, you tackle the responsibility. And I have to think that if the governor didn't think I could do this, he wouldn't have placed the call and had asked me to do this, and I wouldn't have accepted. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's good.
Thank you for being
Yeah,
there.
well,
You
as
did
well
a
as being
phenomenal
here.
job.
My
You did a
pleasure.
phenomenal job.
Thank you for your time.
It means a lot to us that you
Come
came out.
here and
No,
talk to
my
us.
pleasure.
Yeah. I
You know-
suggest we take a 5-minute recess if you don't mind, and then.
Sure.
Thank you.
No, my pleasure.
Take a-
Right.
yeah.
My pleasure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.